Today's video is sponsored by DistroKid. Stick around to learn how you can get 7% off your first year and easily promote your music with one link. What's up guys, and welcome back to Gabe Miller Music. Today I'm going to be showing you some minimal techno jams and the process I went through to make them on the model Cycles by Elektron. I've been digging into this device lately. I got it somewhat recently and I'm still exploring everything that this thing is capable of. So one thing I found it's really good for is kind of more old school electronica and kind of more underground stuff like minimal techno. So I've made two kind of passages of minimal techno with two very different vibes. So I'm going to play those and walk you through how I made them on the model Cycles. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and play through the first jam and then walk you through it, and then I'll play through the second jam and walk you through that one as well. So let's walk through the individual elements here. A lot of this stuff is pretty standard to how one would want to work on at the model Cycles, but there are a few interesting things that I want to draw your attention to. Starting off with the kick, super straightforward kick. I've just got, I can show you the actual settings. For color, this is how it shapes that. I'll get back to this for the other jam, because in this case I'm just going for a fairly standard punchy kick. A little bit of sweep, little on the higher side, contour turned all the way up, so it's got a very defined curve to it. That's basically it for the kick. I've got it turned up enough to get just a little bit of saturation, but overall it's pretty clean. The clap is from a preset, and this is actually done using the chords, interestingly enough, and they've done a pretty good job of making this sound like a proper clap, so I didn't want to try to mess with it further because this is already there. It is worth noting the first instance of parameter locks on here. I'll let that run through. On that kind of early clap, I've got the reverb just for that one step turned way up. So moving on to the hi-hats. Really no swing on this. Another parameter lock with the decay. And I did very little to the tone of this hi-hat. It's pretty much the default with a little bit of reverb and with the decay automated for that one step to create that little pattern, which is super useful. This is another preset. I needed something extra at the end of working on this jam to kind of fill in some space, and this ended up being a nice bit of ear candy. I'm guessing there's some kind of, yeah, there's some wacky stuff going on with the LFO, and it's sending it to color. So some kind of wacky FM stuff, which I'm definitely a fan of. Moving on to the main bass, this one's super simple. This is just the normal tone engine, and I typically find if I turn the tone color up, you start getting into more like metallic territory, because this is FM. And if you start turning it lower, you start getting into pluckier territory. And then if you go way lower, it starts becoming a little more percussive. And this ended up being like a nice happy medium. Other than that, like a little bit of sweep. Once again, to get that pluck element really brought out. Contour brought out a bit to control that movement. And it's overall just a super simple but quite nice little bass element, and I recorded this in unquantized, just because I can. Finally, for this jam, let's talk about the chords, because this is a fun patch. This is the chord engine, obviously, and I've got the shape of the chords at sus4. this patch gets its sound from the LFO setup. I've got a wave here, and I've got the destination set to sweep, which controls kind of the tone of the chord. So you can either go for, well, I'll just twiddle it so you can hear what it does. Get this kind of metallic tone, more saw-like tone, go way down over here, more muted tone. And so I have this set to just cycle through back and forth. So if I was to remove the depth, this is what you get. And I've also got this sent to the delay, which helps it ring out quite nicely, even though these chords like cut each other off. So once I bring the depth back, it has this really pleasing kind of organ, electric piano effect, which I am a big fan of. So once again, all together. And of course, this bit is fun, I should mention, because it's this weird LFO, it adds a degree of randomness to the jam, which is cool. So let's go ahead and move on to the second jam. So I'm gonna play through that and then I'll talk you through it as well. So a much darker take on minimal techno, which I think is a lot of fun. So the thing that made me want to make this video in the first place, really, this kick. So this is, it's obviously got a long delay. Show where the color setting is and how it affects it. A lot of really cool potential for a lot of different sounds, so I settled somewhere in the middle in this case. I've got this set to distort a bit. I've got it turned up like right before it really starts to distort everything. If I was to turn this up even louder, it would distort everything in a really kind of ugly way. And so I tried to keep it somewhat restrained. A little bit of sweep, pretty similar to the other one. And in this case, I want it to ring out quite a bit, but still have a nice defined attack. Moving on to the snare, really short snare. I elected to actually go with the snare, not a clap this time. Let me isolate this. You can hear another case of parameter locks being employed. So in this case, I have the decay turned way up, so it rings out a lot longer. And I think in this case, it's just popping an octave up. So here's those two elements together. Let's add in the hi-hat. Super basic one here, just the decay kind of open, and I think that's all I changed. Super simple. I'll come back to that element in a second. Let me play this main element. So this is a tone track. And I've got the decay kind of in the middle. The main things giving it its sound are the color and shape. Similarly to the other patch, I've got the color set fairly low, like below 1. And then shape is really important because it almost sounds like a sine wave. And as I turn this up, it starts to distort, starts to break up. Set that to its original spot. And that's got this really cool effect. I don't remember if I had any, I do have a little bit of reverb on it. Kind of a small reverb in this case. And the sweep is also adding a lot to the sound in this case. And this was not arrived at by any sort of well thought out anything. This was arrived at by just twiddling knobs, tinkering, until I came up with something cool. So together with the kick. And that's really the foundation of the track, so then I can start building up the percussion. This one's fun. This has another LFO bit of modulation going on. So I set the destination as Keller. So what that does And this is the perk engine, by the way, which I rarely use. I've said before that I think the snare is like the weakest in terms of sound quality. It's like the dinkiest. It can be really nice, like in this case, but normally it's a bit small. I think the most useless engine is the perk. But in this case, I actually made something pretty cool with it. And I'm not saying it's entirely useless, I'm just saying I don't get a whole lot out of it and usually end up swapping it for something else. But in this case, because I'm using a very slow LFO to modulate the color, it almost has like this kind of riser effect. But it's not actually necessarily rising to anywhere, it's kind of oscillating back and forth, so it creates a nice movement. And then of course, quite a bit of reverb and middling amount of sweep, and then contours all the way up, so it's this short little stabby element. This chord's kind of intense, and this is the last element I added, and it ended up being a nice kind of tension builder. Once again, if we're going super dark here, we may as well go all the way. So a couple things of note here. The shape is unison, so that's why it's so dissonant. It's not actually a chord, it's just unison spread really far apart. So it's not playing the same note, it's playing different notes. And of course I've got a long decay on this and a bit of reverb. And then the other thing I've got going on is once again an LFO, but this time set to envelope. So you hit the note and it just goes through that movement once. And I've got that set to sweep. And that's just modulating it really quickly and then holding it there. So if I get rid of this, it's a very different effect. We're getting there. It's a very static patch. But as you increase the depth, get this kind of wacky effect, and that's obviously a bit much, but you get the idea. And then over time I can just turn it up to make it more apparent, and the more apparent it is, the more tense the entire track gets. Today's video is sponsored by DistroKid, the best place to get your music on all the regular streaming and download platforms easily and affordably. If you use my link in the description, they'll give you a 7% off discount on your first year of membership, and included with that membership is a feature they wanted me to tell you about called Hyperfollow, which is genuinely really cool. Essentially, once you've uploaded your latest batch of music to DistroKid, it'll generate a page that you can direct your followers to pre-save the album or pre-order the album, and then those links will automatically populate once the album, for instance, starts popping up in stores. It's one singular link that will take your followers to all the different ways that they can consume your new music. And you can even customize it to include links to your social media, Bandcamp, YouTube, and all that kind of stuff. Your Hyperfollow link never changes, so that link will always work regardless of when it was posted. And yeah, once again, it's the best way to direct your followers to consume your music in the way that suits them best. Since there are so many different platforms out there for consuming music, giving them one link to click and then find the thing that they like to use is the easiest for everyone involved, and DistroKid does this very well. So thank you so much to them for sponsoring this video. Once again, be sure to hit up the link in the description. That helps this channel out and gets you a great service at a bit of a discount. So once again, thank you so much to DistroKid for being a huge supporter of this channel, and thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to see another video about making music on the Model Cycles, you can click or tap up over here, and I'll be back with a new video in a little bit.